Chapter 44. As he continued his aimless wanderings, he stumbled upon the entrance to the dungeon. It was a place he had never noticed before, hidden away from prying eyes. Curiosity got the better of him, and he cautiously descended the cold, stone steps. The air grew heavy with a foreboding presence, and he could feel the weight of centuries of suffering hanging in the atmosphere. It was then that he noticed a peculiar plaque, adorned with cryptic symbols and faded inscriptions. Intrigued, he reached out to touch it, unaware of the horrors that awaited him. In an instant, his surroundings transformed, and he found himself transported to a macabre scene from the past. Dracula's guard, clad in sinister attire, dragged helpless victims into the dungeon, their terrified screams echoing off the damp walls. The prisoners were mercilessly chained to the cold, unforgiving stone, their eyes filled with despair. Dracula himself emerged from the shadows, a sadistic smile playing on his lips. With each agonizing slice, he reveled in the sight of blood trickling down their bodies. The taste of their life force seemed to bring him perverse pleasure as he licked the crimson liquid off their trembling forms. Adelmo's heart raced as Dracula's gaze locked onto him, a chilling smirk etched on his face. The trance was broken, but the horror lingered, leaving Adelmo more terrified than ever before. The realization that he had witnessed the true nature of Dracula's cruelty left him shaken to his core, haunted by the knowledge that such darkness existed in the world. Adelmo continued to explore the eerie corridors of the ancient castle, his footsteps echoing ominously in the dimly lit hallways. As he turned a corner, his eyes fell upon yet another plaque, its inscription sending a shiver down his spine. The plaque seemed oddly out of place, almost as if it didn't belong in the castle at all. Despite his growing unease, Adelmo felt compelled to approach it, his curiosity getting the better of him. He squinted at the faded words, trying to decipher the message without making physical contact, fearing the consequences of triggering another trance-like state. The words on the plaque seemed to blur and shift before Adelmo's eyes, the scene depicted unfolding before him in vivid detail. It spoke of a brutal invasion by the Turks, a violent siege that had once plagued the very halls he now stood in. Before he could pull away, Adelmo's hand brushed against the cold metal surface, and suddenly he was transported back in time. The air grew thick with the stench of blood and death as he witnessed the gruesome massacre of Dracula's castle inhabitants at the hands of the ruthless invaders. Dracula himself seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving Adelmo stranded in the chaos, his heart pounding in terror. As the vision faded and Adelmo snapped back to reality, a sharp pain shot through his head, causing him to stumble backwards and collide with a solid stone wall. Darkness crept into the edges of his vision as he slumped to the ground, unconscious. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows, kneeling beside him to check for signs of life. Feeling a faint pulse, the stranger deduced that Adelmo had merely knocked himself out. With a swift and practiced motion, the figure hoisted Adelmo over his shoulder and carried him to a secluded room, away from prying eyes. And there, in the silence of the hidden chamber, Adelmo would rest, unaware of the sinister forces that lurked within the castle's walls. Just like all the other dreams before, this one felt eerily familiar yet distinctly different. Adelmo found himself standing at the bottom of a staircase that seemed to lead nowhere, except to a tomb in the heart of New Orleans. Confusion clouded his mind as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. How did he end up in a church when he distinctly remembered entering a tomb? The air around him felt heavy with an unexplainable sense of dread, as if the walls themselves were whispering ancient secrets. As he picked up a newspaper that lay abandoned on a nearby pew, his heart skipped a beat when he realized the headlines were in a language he couldn't understand. Panic began to set in as he frantically searched for any clue to his whereabouts. Adelmo's eyes widened in horror as he read the unfamiliar words on the newspaper. He wasn't in New Orleans anymore. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He was in Romania, a land thousands of miles away from where he had started. How was this possible? How could he have been transported to a foreign country in the blink of an eye? The room seemed to spin around him as he struggled to come to terms with his new reality. Outside, the sky darkened as a swarm of massive bats descended upon the village, their wings casting eerie shadows on the cobblestone streets. Adelmo's heart raced as he watched in terror as the creatures attacked unsuspecting villagers, their blood-curdling screeches echoing through the night. Adelmo's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before his eyes. The air was thick with the stench of death and decay, and the sound of fluttering wings filled his ears. With a sinking feeling in his gut, he realized that these were no ordinary bats. They were monstrous creatures, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Fear gripped his heart as he frantically searched for a way out, his hands trembling as he fumbled for a weapon. As he closed his eyes in a desperate attempt to calm his racing thoughts, a sudden jolt ran through him. He awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest as he realized he was in an unfamiliar place, a place that held dark secrets and unspeakable horrors. The lump on his head throbbed with pain, a grim reminder of the nightmarish ordeal he had just endured. Where was he? And more importantly, how would he ever find his way out?